Rebecca, we'll share our screen here. I gotta share it. Can everyone see that, or is it?
I cannot see it yet.
Okay, I don't think we shared it. Okay, great. I don't think we ended up clicking on the. There we go.
All right, something's happening. There it is.
All right.
Now.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in for some traffic trivia today. So obviously you all know me as the Vice President or President of the ASCE chapter, and then Joe Bauer is also here presenting with me for the trivia. So if you can download the Kahoot app on your phone, or you can also go onto an internet browser and go to kahoot.com. And then I will share the screen here so you can see the pin. All right, so everyone should see there's a game pin. That'll be the pin you'll enter once you get into the app or on the website, and then we'll get started once we have people start joining.
You can make your name whatever you want, but remember, if you do win, you're going to have to admit.
And as people are joining, just so everyone is aware of how Kahoot works and how they total points. So getting the correct answer is important, but you also want to answer it as fast as possible because that gives you more points. So it's speed and correctness when you go through the questions. Is everyone muted? So it looks like we've got a couple more people that still need to join in. Okay.
I think that's probably it. Maybe people are just observing.
Okay. All right. We will get started. So I'm going to actually not share anymore. We'll go back to the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint is color coded, so it'll be easy to follow if you're playing on your phone as far as what are the answers. They're color coded with the Kahoot. So we will get started. Yep. All right. So what does LOS mean? A, let only sing. B, level of service. C, level of signals. Or D, level of signs. All right, so it's level of service. So LOS is level of service, and here shows the different levels that we look at when we do a traffic impact study. A is obviously free flow. That means everything's going posted speed at or below or at or above. There's no stops, no delay. And then S is everything's broken down and you're at a standstill. One thing to keep in mind is that in an urban area, level service C, D is acceptable. So Grand Rapids, a lot of their roadways are at a level service D. That's acceptable for that type of environment and urban area. So if people are complaining and then you see a level of service D, that's pretty typical. But E and F, you want to potentially look at doing something to help mitigate those issues.
Which of the following is a goal of traffic engineering? A, to impede pedestrian movements. B, to only consider passenger vehicles. C, to increase traffic volumes. D, to reduce crashes. Good. Yep. All right. Well, the answer to that is B, to reduce crashes. So traffic engineering is a subdiscipline of transportation engineering, and you're really looking to address planning, design, and operations of streets and highways, looking at how their traffic flow, the geometry, the sidewalks, you know, really you're considering all modes of transportation now. That's something that's kind of been a highlight of, you know, more recently, especially with HCM and such, that you're worried about the movement of all vehicles and pedestrians, and then also making sure that it's safe. Okay.
All right, so what are some ways to provide traffic calming on a street? A, things you drive over and things you drive around. B, yell at people to slow down. C, reduce speed limits. D, multi-way stops at every street. So when we do traffic calming, we want to provide things to drive over and things to drive around. So it's a method of slowing traffic through physical treatments of streets. So some examples would be speed humps, curb bump outs, speed tables, roundabouts. So one of the big things when looking at doing traffic calming is where you're planning to place it. So a residential area, you could look at speed humps, speed tables, that type of thing. But in a downtown corridor, city street, doing the curb bump outs is pretty common. But being aware of your surroundings and where your site restrictions is important when looking at traffic calming.
What are the safety benefits of a roundabout? To reduce conflict points and improve operations, A. B is to increase major injury crashes. C, to increase speeds. Or D, center island is for parking vehicles. They're already done? Yep, I'm glad I read through all of those. So I'm hoping you guys all guessed letter A there, to reduce conflict points and improve operations. A lot of times roundabouts are looked at as a safety countermeasure to help reduce crashes that result in injury or death. And then also be able to lower speeds as people have to slow entering the intersection. You're offering, a lot of times you see locations where you might have a four-way stop and it improves operations. The public might say, well, why not just put in a traffic signal? But really many times many hours out of the day, you might not have the traffic that warrants a signal. So you would have vehicles sitting there at a red light when the operation for a roundabout allows them to continue free flow through that intersection, yielding when there's conflicting vehicles. So, and then also the conflict points in a roundabout are significantly less than a standard intersection.
All right, so what is the typical volume threshold for a road diet in vehicles per day? A, 8,000, B, 16,500, C, 20,000, or D, 25,000.
This one's always a little tricky.
Ooh, mixed answers on this one.
Ready?
Yep. So the answer is C, 20,000 vehicles per day or less. So as you can see, kind of a fun fact before we get into details, an example of a successful road diet on the SHW website was Saginaw Street in downtown Flint. And the picture that they posted is actually of the ROWE building in downtown Flint. So that's kind of exciting. But road diets, they really should be within that 20,000 vehicles per day or less. Once you get over that, it's a little difficult and there's potential more congestion. But road diets improve safety, they reduce the speeds, they can mitigate queues, they can improve the pedestrian environment, they can allow for different modes of transportation on the roadway network. So you should do a study and you should look at obviously the ADT, but also seeing if it's feasible. So that study will help determine if it's feasible. You can look at crashes, but yeah, keeping it at that 20,000 or less for vehicles per day is a good indicator for road diet. The first stage will be successful or not.
All right, what is a warrant for a multi-way stop at an intersection? A, 1,000 vehicles per day at an approach of an intersection. B, the 85th percentile speed is less than 35 miles per hour. C, a call from the mayor. Or D, major street approach at least 300 vehicles for 8 hours. All right. The answer here was B, the major street approach of at least 300 vehicles for 8 hours. There's guidance in the MMU TCD on multi-way stops. They do require doing an engineering study. You want to look at your ADT on both the major and minor approach, looking at crashes at the intersection. If there's 5 or more in a 12-month period, that may be mitigated by an all-way stop is something to take into consideration. And then really your minimum volumes for that are at least the 300 vehicles on the major road, and then 200 on the minor street. And then there's a little, if the speed exceeds 40 miles per hour, just like similar to when you're doing a signal warrant, there's a 70% value. And then also you can do a combination of the crashes and the volumes to be able to determine if both of those warrant some type of an all-way stop.
All right, so what is a warrant for installing a traffic signal? A, minimum vehicle volumes for 8 hours. B, 85th percentile speed exceeds 35 miles per hour. C, email from the city commissioner. D, intersections are closer than 200 feet apart. Still ticking down. All right. Well, yep. All right. So you want to meet the minimum vehicle volume for 8 hours. So a call from a city commissioner should not be the main thing that you look at when wanting to put a traffic signal in. So there's 9 warrants for a traffic signal. Typically, you really like MDOT, they want to see 8-hour vehicle volume warrants or peak hour. But you can look at the 8-hour, the 4-hour, peak hour, pedestrian volume. There's a school crossing. MDOT has a nice spreadsheet that they have that you enter all this information in, and then it'll let you know what's warranted based on these 9 warrants. So that's pretty helpful. And then you can write a brief memo about it and explain why or why not the location is warranted or not.
Okay. Ooh. What is 85th percentile speed? Is it A, 85% of highest speed travel, B, speed that 85% of all vehicles are observed to be traveling or slower, C, something made up by traffic engineers, or D, 85% of vehicle volumes traveling at 55 miles per hour or higher? All right, the answer was B, the speed that 85% of all vehicles are observed to be traveling or slower. So when setting the speed limits, you should have a traffic control order. And what you will do is typically is some type of a speed study that they observe the speed at which vehicles are traveling, and that 85th percentile speed has been determined to really be something of a safety, that you have the 15% that might be traveling faster. Those can kind of be handled through enforcement, and then everyone else, it's a safe roadway there. There's also certain speeds. You have your statutory speeds, the posted speeds. You know, there's unposted roadways that are 55 miles per hour. And then you have your school speed zones, your work zones, and then you might have areas where there's variable speeds or some type of an advisory speed around curves. And then it is stated in here, which we highlighted, that a speed limit should not be posted less than the 50th percentile speed of free-flowing traffic under optimal conditions. So that's something important to keep in mind.
And then one more thing on that. One of the things that to keep in mind when people are requesting that you do a speed study is that they might not get the result that they want. So they might want to see the speed limit reduced because they think they're speeding in their neighborhood or speeding on their street. And then you do the study and the 85th percentile comes back that it's actually higher. So you could go from a 35 mile an hour to a 45 mile an hour. And that obviously is not the result they want. So making sure that they're aware of that. I know Road Commission of Kalamazoo County is dealing with this right now on their Nichols Road segment, and the township requested it. The speed limit got raised, and now they're fighting it, and they want it lowered again. And the state police is saying they're not changing it. So there's a lot of different elements here, but you're most likely not going to get the result that they want when they request something, because the speed limit probably will be raised.
Great. Let me do this one. Okay, yeah. What are internal capture trips? A, trips generated by a mixed-use site that both begin and end within the site. B, a spreadsheet that gives numbers out. C, trips captured by an internal source. Or D, trips to a restaurant. All right, so the answer was A, trips generated by a mixed-use site that both begin and end within the site. So really, internal capture is you might have a site that has both residential, shopping, restaurant, maybe an office space, and it's the size and the magnitude of it that people that are living in the apartment might walk down and grab a sandwich from the restaurant, or if you have an office, they would go and eat at one of the restaurants. So really, internal capture, there's a lot of studies behind that. So you look at when you have large mixed-use developments, what traffic isn't actually getting on the road, it is actually just staying within the development and therefore isn't a new trip that's on the roadway. Oh, there we go.
All right, so what are pass-by trips? A, trips to a hotel. B, when drivers miss their turn. C, added trips to the roadway network. D, trips already on the road that stop at a site and then re-enter the road. All right, so pass-by trips are trips already on the road that stop at the site and then re-enter. So a good example of this is you're leaving your house to go to work and you stop and go into a Starbucks, and then you get back on the roadway and you go to your final destination. So it's not a new trip on the network because you're already on that roadway driving to your office, but you're stopping at that intermediate location to grab your coffee. So they're not new trips. So when you're doing a study and there are pass-by trips that are in the ITE, trip generation handbook, it's good to include those because it actually benefits the development sometimes, and it's more accurate based on what's actually going on there, those people stopping.
All right, what is average driver eye height? A, 5 feet, B, 4.5 feet, C, 3.5 feet, or D, 1.5 feet? All right, the answer was C, 3.5 feet. For when you're doing sight distance studies, the height of the driver's eye is considered to be 3.5 feet above the roadway surface. It's something that there was a study that was done that said the average vehicle height decreased over time, so now it's 3.5 feet. This is just something to take into consideration when you're looking at anything that might obstruct the view. If somebody stopped at a intersection and you're doing your stopping and passing sight distance measurements. And then also the truck height, I believe, is 7 feet. So, all right. Good question.
All right. So what is a traffic control order? A, order to only place stop signs on streets. B, used by police to pull you over for traffic violation. C, order to place a traffic signal. D, order officially establishing the location of traffic control devices.
All right. Great.
So it's D, legal document for placement of speed, stop, and parking signs. So the biggest thing on here is if you are placing those speed limit, stop signs, parking signs, yield signs, that you do have a traffic control order in place. Without that, they are not enforceable. So it's hard if you get a speeding ticket and there isn't a TCO for that speed limit sign, you can fight that. So having that TCO in place is important when you're placing these signs. And usually once you do like a speed study, then you do the TCO and that puts in place that speed limit. So it kind of goes together with that speed study.
Ooh, question 13. What is a step in the removal of a traffic signal? A, hire a contractor who's pre-qualified. B, place the signal in flash mode for 30 days. C, perform an engineering study. D, cut the power to the signal immediately.
All right.
Everyone's fast today.
Yeah, everyone's very fast.
Told them they had to be speedy. All right, the answer was C, perform an engineering study, and tried to trick y'all with the 30 days. Placing the signal on flash is a part of what you'll do after you do your engineering study to determine if the signal is still warranted. Once you look at that, if it's not meeting the warrant, you would want to determine the appropriate traffic control to place after removal of the signal, if it's an all-way stop, a two-way stop, and then removing any sight distance restrictions that might be out there as necessary. You want to inform the public of it. And we have an example here of placing a sign out there to let them know that the signal would be in flash or it's under study for removal. And then you leave it on flash for 90 days. And what you're doing there is just trying to see if you're placing your new traffic control devices that you've recommended for your study. Is there an increase in crashes? Is there something that is a result that happens that says, well, maybe we got too hasty and shouldn't remove the signal? And then if everything's collected, if you don't see an increase in traffic during your study period, you confirm that the control devices are appropriate, then you'll remove your signal. And that's that.
All right, so question 14, why would you restrict left turns into a driveway? A, reduce the chance of left turn lockup. B, there are less than 10,000 vehicles per day. C, the driveway is 1,000 feet from a signalized intersection. D, nearby residents don't like the business owner. Okay. So the answer is A, to reduce the chance of left turn lockup. So really you want to make sure that your driveways have adequate offsets. That way you're not having people who are trying to turn left, locking up your other drives on the roadway. And then looking at your volumes on the roadway at 10,000 vehicles per day, that could make the need for a continuous left turn lane, or two-way. They're not recommended where there's more than 4 through lanes because of crash rates. So seeing what your offset is, driveways offset are better, and then obviously no offset. And then you don't want it, there's number 3 and number 4, the improper offsets. You don't really want them like that because there will be left turn lockup there.
What treatment should be considered first in an unsignalized intersection experiencing a high crash rate? A, install a traffic signal. B, construct a cul-de-sac. C, construct an at-grade separation or separated intersection. Or D, upgrade intersection pavement markings and signage. All right. So the answer was D, to upgrade your intersection pavement markings and signing. Really, when you're looking at unsignalized intersections, sometimes it's simple as, like in this example, having a stop sign ahead, having your reflective sheeting on your signpost can really help let people know that there's something up ahead, especially when you're in kind of a rural setting or there's a lot of trees or things that might be blocking that view of the stop signs up ahead. You also you can double up your advanced warning, double up your stop signs, and then really look at trimming back some of the vegetation that might be covering the signs. But this is your first step before you start looking at other mitigation measures like a traffic signal or a roundabout.
All right, so question 16, what is shared parking? A, parking for multiple vehicles. B, parking space assigned to more than one vehicle. C, parking shared by adjacent property owners. D, use of a parking space to serve more than one land use without conflict.
I know there's a lot of questions coming in right now, so we will answer.
Yes.
All. Yeah. Yes. Good questions.
So the answer is D, use of a parking space to serve 2 or more individual land uses without conflict or encroachment. So there's a shared parking, it's the ability to share parking spaces, and it's the result of 2 conditions. So you've got variations in accumulation of vehicles by hour, day, and season for that land use. And then there's relationships between the land uses, visiting the multiple businesses in that area. So there's shared parking methodologies to look at that and apply the appropriate adjustments to the parking ratios for mixed use. So this could be like a shopping center where you have, or a strip mall type thing where you've got different land uses. They can all share that parking based on what's out there, and then there's different ways you can adjust that for the planning and approval process.
Right. Okay. What makes on-street parking suitable? A, a low-volume, low-speed street. B, a high-volume urban corridor. C, the mayor needs a place to park. Or D, adjacent to a bike lane. Okay. Right. The answer was A, low volume, fewer than 15,000 ADT, and low speed, less than 30 miles per hour, are the conditions for on-street parking. The example we have here is in the city of, the village of Holly. You can see it stamped on the concrete there, with angled parking along the roadway. This is in their downtown area. So typically you try and avoid placing the parking next to bike lanes. You know, you can have hazards for both the biker and the person opening their door into the bike lane. Anything on high-speed roadways, and do a lot of times, in different example, we'll have parallel parking, and allowing people to be able to make that movement is why you want the lower volume, lower speed roadway, instead of having, you know, traffic going at 40 miles an hour. So. Right. Last one.
All right, question 18. Is a lead or lag left turn phase better? A, lead, B, lag, C, both depending on the situation, D, both can be used interchangeably. And this is the last question.
Should have been helped too as the lead first.
I know.
All right.
So the answer is C, both depending on the situation. So there's different advantages and disadvantages of the lead left turn and lag left turn. You really want to look at it. A lot of times it's based on local policy, intersection capacity, and coordinated signal timing. So you really want to have, if you do one at an intersection, you really want to have that be the case throughout your whole network, or at least along that corridor. You don't want to mix them up by signal as you go down a corridor, because it's confusing. So lead left turn movements begin together and they may end independently, and then lag movements begin independently, but they must end together. So that's the difference between the two.
And one important thing is, if you have leading left turns in the morning, you have to have leading left turns in the afternoon. Don't change it by time of day either.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'll stop sharing.
Share. Let's see here. Okay, so let's see who are top three. The winner is Nat C. So I will, we have prizes for all three of you. So I will reach out to all three of you and we will get in touch with you, and I will stop by and drop off your prizes. So congratulations. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna stop sharing here and then we can look through the questions.
All right, so first question. Okay, who initiates requesting traffic signals removal? So really this can come from anyone. This could be something that if you're seeing issues or maybe crashes where people aren't, you might see crashes where people are running through that red light. It could mean going through and taking a look at it to see if it is warranted, if someone's sitting there for a long period of time with quite a bit of delay. A lot of times you don't see requests for traffic signals removal. Where we see it a lot in this area in particular, being in Flint or Saginaw or Bay City, is you've had a large industrial presence where you have a lot of signals that were put in the 60s and 70s, moving traffic for people going to work in and out of the city, and those jobs just aren't there anymore. That traffic's not there anymore. So in a lot of cases, you have quite a few unwarranted signals. So it might just be, in that case, it's kind of knowing your area and knowing as you're going through and doing road projects, you might make it a part of that you review the signal warrants at that intersection. I know that's kind of the first step that MDOT takes when they do any of their signal optimizations, is looking at signal warrants and verifying that all of the signals along the corridor are warranted, because it's something that you could be able to provide better progression, perhaps if you don't have signals that aren't warranted. But one of the warrants, there's a signal coordination warrant too. So in some cases, maybe having it there provides platooning or things to move traffic along. So is Michigan Left designed to address the two-way left turn lane on 4 or more through traffic lanes? Yeah, I think that having a boulevard, excuse me, is something, so you do have a lot of, is a way of providing it so that everyone has to turn right in, right out of all of their driveways. So you eliminate those left turns into driveways. So absolutely, the concept of having the boulevard in the Michigan Left is meant to address, instead of having a 5-lane roadway with the center left turn lane, or in some cases, you know, in certain areas, you end up with a 7-lane roadway. You know, that's if you weren't to have a median and have a left turn lane instead. And it just adds up to a lot of congestion, and those left turns aren't getting sometimes the gaps that they need. Whereas once you have that median in there, you can address that. That question is a long one.
I was wondering if you have read a new book that is out discussing traffic engineering and the conflict between a transportation system and city building. It is Confessions of a Recovering Engineer by Charles, whatever is that, Marone. Yeah. I was curious of your thoughts on the book and what you think of the term strode, something that is not a street used for city building and not a road used to connect two cities together. I personally haven't read the book.
No, this is the first I've heard of
So
it.
now I'm gonna look.
I'm gonna have to look this up. So, book club book.
Yes, so I guess I don't have a comment on it or what my thoughts are on it, but I'm gonna look into that. So thank you for that. And then I was gonna ask to write your name down if you were a winner, so I appreciate that, so I can reach out to you guys.
All right.
Are there any other questions or just general topics that anyone would like to discuss regarding any of these? Well, thank you everyone for playing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Something fun to start off the new year. And I'll be getting in touch with Matt, Peyton, and Rachel with your prizes. So congratulations.
I thought it was really fun. Thank you, ladies, for doing this for us. It was a different format, but I certainly learned a few things. So I think I earned my PDH certificate this time. I did want to mention that our next meeting is on Wednesday, February 2nd. It's going to be a different time because we are doing our joint meeting with MSPE. That starts at 11:45, and you'll be getting your typical email invitations. I have a few questions about our YouTube page. We will be uploading December's recording and hopefully today's recording, which I should probably stop now.